Well, good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
It's time to begin. It's time to begin on our 45th anniversary Sunday. So let us start by standing and let's sing a song together. Bless the Lord, oh my soul, worship His holy name. Sing like never before, oh my soul, worship Your holy name. The sun comes up, it's a new day dawning. It's time to sing Your song again. Whatever may pass and whatever lies before me, let me be singing when the evening comes. Bless the Lord, oh my soul, worship His holy name. Sing like never before, oh my soul, worship Your holy name. You're rich in love and You're slow to anger. Your name is great and Your heart is kind. For all Your goodness I will keep on singing. 10,000 reasons for my heart to find. Bless the Lord, oh my soul, worship His holy name. Sing like never before, oh my soul, I'll worship Your holy name. And now this next part that's coming up, this is one of mine and Pastor's favorite verses in the whole song. It's a very good message. It talks about what it'll be like on that final day when we get to be with the Lord. So it has a very good message to it. So sing out good and loud with me on this next part. And on that day when my strength is failing, the end draws near and my time has come, still my soul will sing Your praise unending. 10,000 years and then forevermore. Bless the Lord, oh my soul, worship His holy name. Sing like never before, oh my soul, I worship Your holy name. Bless the Lord, oh my soul, I worship His holy name. Worship your holy name. Lord, I'll worship your holy name. Sing like never before, oh my soul. I'll worship your holy name, Jesus. Worship your holy name. Worship your holy name.
Let's remain standing for a word of prayer. Our Father in heaven, we are thankful for the blessings you've given us. We thank you for letting us come together to worship you today. And we thank you for giving us this church that 45 years ago was organized into an official church. And Father, for the 45 years plus that we've been here as a church, we thank you for your blessings, for your provision, for your protection, for your watch care over us. And we pray, Father, that you will be with us in every way. Bless this service today. Help this church to continue on for many, many more years, serving you, reaching people with the gospel. In Jesus Christ's name we ask it. Amen. Amen. You may be seated. We do welcome you today, and we are so glad that you are here with us on this special day. This is a special anniversary. It only happens once in the life of a church. You say, well, we have one every year, don't we? Well, not a 45th one. Just once. And in 5 years, we'll have a 50th one, if the Lord doesn't return before then. But you know, he could return at any time, any moment. So we're thankful for God's blessings over the last few years. And we're going to be talking about that a little bit and looking at a couple of different things with it. But before we get into all of it, I want to go ahead, and we're going to have a little bit of special music right now. So bear with me a little bit. But listen to what the words of this song say, because he'll do it again.
You may be down and feel like God has somehow forgotten that you are faced with circumstances you can't get through. Right now it seems that there's no way out and you're going under. But God's proven time and time again, he'll take care of you, and he'll do it again. He'll do it again. If you just take a look at where you are now and where you've been, well, hasn't he always come through? It's the same now as then. Oh, you may not know how, you may not know when, but he'll do it again. God knows the things you're going through, and he knows how you're hurting. You see, he knows just how your heart has been broken into. But he's the God of the stars, of the sun, and the seas, and he is your Father. He can calm the storm, and he'll find some way to fix it for you. And he'll do it again.
always come through for you. He's the same now as then. Oh, you may not know how, you may not know when, but he'll do it again. He's still God, and he will not fail you. Oh, yes, he's still God, and he will not change. Oh, yes, he's still God, and he's fighting for you. Just like Moses, just like Daniel, just like Shadrach and Meshach and Abednego, he'll do it again. He'll do it again. If you just take a look at where you are now and where you've been, well, hasn't he always come through for you? He's the same now as then. Oh, you may not know how, you may not know when, but he'll do it again. You may not know how, you may not know when, you may not know how, you may not know when, but I know that he'll do it again. He'll do it again. And folks, that needs to be the theme today for our church. He's done it in the past. He's done it many times, and he'll do it again. And that's what we're going to be looking at a little bit later. But I want to share with you a couple of things. I contacted all of the former pastors of this church, with the exception of one. And he's in heaven, so I didn't have a direct line to him. But I got his wife. But I contacted all of them, and they all were supposed to get back with me and send me either a video or an email or something like that, but I got responses from 2 out of the 4. So I want to share with you. First of all, I want to read to you what Eileen Manus put up there, I said, and if you put her picture up, please. Is it not working? Keep trying. We had a picture up here. Maybe they mistakenly got one of mine and it broke it. I don't know. But anyway. Here's what she said. She wrote to us. She said, "Dear friends and loved ones, thanks for letting me share a couple of memories with you on this special day. Pastor Virgil Manus passed from this life February 8th, 2018, to a beautiful place called heaven. He would have been so happy to see how this church has progressed and grown on to greater things and been blessed by all the new faces that are here today. God has surely blessed this church not only with people, but with the men of God that have served here in the pulpit. The year 1975 was a special time for our family. Our last pastorate was in Arlington Free Will Baptist Church near the capital of the United States, and we love the time God has granted this opportunity. But it was time for him to get back to the pulpit after taking care of some business affairs back in Missouri. A good friend on the Maryland State Board had mentioned that he should pray about starting a church in Delaware. At that time, we did not have any churches in the whole state. He was one excited minister. After meeting with the National Home Missions, he began preparing for the day he would be on the ground in Wilmington, Delaware. I had just gotten comfortable being back in our home state of Missouri. My mom and dad were getting up in years, as well as Virgil's family. When a man of God has the longing to be where he knows the Lord wants him to go, there's no looking back. We prepared for the day we would be moving, and and asked Virgil's brother to travel with us to help drive, and we would pay his airplane ticket back to Missouri in a week so he could get back to work. Our house sold quickly, and we were on our way. When we got to Delaware, we got the news that the house contract had fallen through, and instead of buying, we were forced to rent until we got the house back on the market and sold. We still had to get James back to Missouri. Pastor Dewey Lockey called him for a revival in his church, and we were saved by the bell. We knew it was by God's hand that only He made it possible. Not only that, but the interest rate had dropped from 11% interest to 4% interest. We bought this big yellow house by the side of this church. It's not yellow anymore, by the way. And we had just enough land to begin building the first church of Newcastle, Delaware. We had 9 people for the first church service in 1975, 99 people in March of 1977. There are so many people that helped build this church, and some of the best men of God has answered the call to fill the pulpit here. I could not call all their names. Thank you for answering the call of God in your life and helping make a country boy's dream come true. There were some adjustments to make for our children, Virgil Madison, Catherine Ann, and Jonathan Lee, but they soon loved Delaware. Jonathan always carried a hammer with him to help Daddy build the church. He was 3 years old at the time. One day he told his father when the building was near completion, he said, "Daddy, when we get finished, I could preach upstairs and you could preach in the basement." Eileen Mays. And we have one other, Pastor Elmer Turnbow sent this. And we had a picture of him too, so we're having some technical difficulties today. It says, "Greetings in the Lord from Cuba, Missouri. Congratulations on 45 years of serving the Lord and being a light in the darkness in the Newcastle Free Will Baptist Church area. My late wife Gladys and I were blessed to serve alongside many of you back in the early 90s as your pastor's family. Arriving in 1990 from a 7-year church plant, we led to an organized church in St. Petersburg, Florida. God had led us in a totally different direction, both in location and in ministry. I remember arriving in Newcastle with our moving van to discover that the parsonage toilet had fallen through the floor. We found a nearby apartment to move into, and we, along with many of the church members, began several months of reforming the house. We grew together as a church family in those many months of laughter and hard work as we labored together to restore the parsonage. We had a blessed ministry during our time there. Many were saved, baptized, joined the church, and I performed many weddings and funerals. One time, 2 in one day, as the church continued to shine in the community. The deacon board and church leaders were all very supportive, and we served together in harmony. One of the greatest joys was ordaining a man who, along with his family Laura, Chris, and Katie, had become our close friends. Grady Ham had a wonderful testimony, and it was such a blessing to see him step out in faith to serve as a deacon at the church in this capacity. Another blessing we witnessed was the Newcastle Free Will Baptist Church fully supporting Richard and Sandy Atwood in their new home mission church plant. As a church grew spiritually in this decision and their desire to see God working in other areas to further His kingdom. Gladys went home to glory in 2015, but I know that she would join me in thanking you for the love and encouragement you all showed us during our time with you. You touched our lives in so many ways. Best wishes on your 45th celebration, and we look forward to your future as you serve the Lord and witness to your mission field there at Newcastle Free Will Baptist Church. May God bless you, Pastor Wayne and his family, and bless you all, Reverend Elmer Turnbow. So, we got those back. Now, we wanted to honor some people in the church this week. And 3 people that we in particular wanted to honor. And you know the way it is, not one of them is able to be here today. So I went out yesterday and talked to 2 of them and gave them a plaque. This is one of the plaques for one of the people, a nice little plaque. And so, first of all, I want to play the one we wanted to honor Brother Al Wharton for his years of service. And so can we play that video? So anyway, Brother Al, in appreciation for all your many years of service as a deacon, we want to give you this award from the church, and thank you for your service in the church. So let me give that to you.
Thank you very much.
Well, we appreciate, we want you to know you've not been forgotten.
No.
It may seem like it, but you haven't.
Yeah, thank you.
The church thinks a lot of you, and a lot of the people there still think about you and wonder about how you're doing and want to wish you their best.
Yeah.
And so we thank you for your service, and
Thank you so
we
much.
appreciate that.
Appreciate that. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
The second person we wanted to honor was Ron Fell for 20 plus years of service as treasurer of the church. And we have his picture here. We did not do any video, but he was thrilled to get this plaque. He said, "Nobody's ever done anything like that for me before. That is so nice." And he was actually moved to tears by it. So we appreciate him, and he's not able to come. Brother Al and Brother Ron neither have been able to get out and go and do anything for a while. Remember them in your prayers. They definitely need that, and I'm sure they would appreciate it. But we wanted to let them know that we remember them. We have not forgotten them, and we are thankful for all the hard work over the years that they've put into everything. Then the third person we wanted to show our appreciation to, I did not get with them yesterday. Things just did not work out where we could because they're in the middle of moving from our area. And that's the plaque that I've got with me today. And it says, "In appreciation for your many years of service as deacon, David Dillard, awarded October 10th, 2021, Newcastle Free Will Baptist Church." And so, Brother Dave, Carol, if you're watching, I hope you are. We appreciate you. We have not forgotten you. And we remember you, and we are thankful for God's blessings and the time that you're here and the dedication that you've given to this church over the years. In Pennsylvania, they said that their official moving day is this week. So they're packing and trying to get everything. Of course, neither one of them are in the greatest of health. Fortunately, their son David's up helping, and they've had other help back and forth, and so they're getting everything done. So we wanted to honor them, and I'll be sure and get this to him somehow. Even if I have to drive up to Pennsylvania and give it to him, I will get it to him at some point. But we wanted to honor them and thank them for their service. So let's give them all a round of applause. Now, I also said that I had a little something to give away to somebody. It's not much, but to somebody who brought the most people with them. Is there anybody here that brought 30 people with them? I had a feeling I wouldn't get any takers on that one. Let's say 5 people. Anybody bring 5? 4? 3? I know some brought 2. Who all brought 2 with them? Would you raise your hand? Brother Joel did. Well, we thank you, Brother Joel. On Wednesday nights, we have been studying the last several weeks a little book called The Red Sea Rules. We finished that. And now we've started on another one by the same author, Robert J. Morgan. This is based on the scripture in the book of Joshua, where the children of Israel, the Israelites, crossed not the Red Sea, but the Jordan River. And it's called the Jordan River Rules. And we've been doing this on the last couple of Wednesday nights. And by the way, we're doing this on Wednesday nights at 7 o'clock Eastern Time, live on Facebook Live and on YouTube. And so if you want to go along with us, if you want to get one of these little books, it's the Jordan River Rules is the name of it. And this is a brand new book. We're going over it, and I would encourage the rest of you to buy one. Brother Joel, you don't have to buy one. We're going to give you one. So if I could get Olivia, can you come and do this for me, please? Give this to Brother Joel. And thank you. Thank you. Right there. Over on this side. This side. This side. This side.
Thank you so much.
And we thank you for doing that. You all have some tickets in your hands. Hang on to them. We're not going to do that yet. We're going to do that when we go downstairs. But we've got a few other things to give away as well. We thank you for coming and being with us in this service. And I know this is kind of some long preliminary stuff to get out of the way, but there are a couple other things that I need to mention real quick for you. First of all, on the rail out there, we have a box that you can put your tithes and offerings in for the church. There are some envelopes there. If you want to put it in an envelope, just drop it in the box. If you want to just write a check, drop it in the box. Those of you who are watching on Facebook or YouTube, you can give by sending a check to the church at the church address, which was on the screen before the service, or you can give through Tithely. There is a place to click. You can go to our church website too and click on giving, and there's a place you can do it, and you can give electronically. So we want you to do that. We've had several people that have done that in the past that are doing that. And so we're thankful for all of those who are giving and faithful to their giving. But we also have something else that we want to give everybody. And you can pick this up on your way out. And that's a brand new ink pen that we're giving away. And also, we have church connection cards out there. Now, I want everybody today. You say, well, I'm not new. Well, that doesn't matter. We would want, like everybody today, to fill out one of those cards. So, Caitlin, if you could hand those cards out, please. And bring the pens, too. We'll just go ahead and give them out. That way, if you want to take notes during the service, you can do that. So, we'll give these out to you. Connection card. We want everybody to fill out one of these connection cards. And if you've got any prayer requests, it's a good opportunity to put it on there. If you've put your address, your email, anything like that. If you would like to be included in our Prayer Warriors prayer request list, put that on there. Just mark on there to do that. And you can do whatever you want to do. But we want to keep a record of your attendance on this historic day. And make sure that everybody is accounted for and we're here. And we're so thankful you're here. I hope you are too. I don't know. How many of you would rather be in the fanciest jail in America?
What?
In the fanciest jail in America? Would you rather be there than here?
I don't think so.
I don't think so either. So we're glad you're here, and I know that God's going to bless. So let's sing another song together, and I think you'll like this song. We've sung it before. It's a very good song. So let's sing it together. Let's stand.
We will remember the works of your hands. and give you praise, for great is thy faithfulness. We will burn, we will remember the works of your hands. We will stop and give you praise, for great is thy faithfulness. You're our creator, our life sustainer, deliverer, our comfort, our joy. Throughout the ages, you've been our shelter, our peace in the midst of the storm. With signs and wonders, you showed your power. With precious blood, you showed us your grace. You've been our helper, our liberator, the giver of life with no end. We will remember, we will remember, we will remember the works of your hands. We will stop and give you praise, for great is thy faithfulness. When we walk through life's darkest valleys, we will look back at all you have done, and we will shout, our God is good, and he is the faithful one. Hallelujah, hallelujah, to the one on whom all blessings flow. Hallelujah, hallelujah, to the one whose glory has been shown. We will remember, we will remember, we will remember the works of your hands. We will shout and give you praise, for great is thy faithfulness. I still remember the day you saved me, the day I heard you call out my name. You said you loved me, would never leave me, and I've never been the same. We will remember, we will remember, we will remember the works of your hands. We will shout and give you praise, for great is thy faithfulness. We will remember, we will remember, we will remember the works of your hands. We will stop and give you praise, for great is thy faithfulness, thy faithfulness.
And you may be seated. Somebody once said about a song like that, if that doesn't light your fire spiritually, your wood's wet.
Amen.
That ought to get us up and going. You know, we ought to be ready. I will remember. And that's what this day is about, isn't it? Remembering back those 45 years. But it's not all that this day is about. It's about looking forward to the next however many years God lets us be here on the face of this earth, to the work that God has for us to do. So that's what we're going to look at today. I said a while ago, on Wednesday nights, we're studying the Jordan River Rules by Robert Morton. And we're going through that. This is based on the book of Joshua, on the Israelites going into the promised land. Finally, after 40 years of wandering in the wilderness. Now, you know why they were wandering in the wilderness, don't you? They were wandering in the wilderness because they disobeyed God. They didn't do what God told them to do. And so now they're getting ready to go into the promised land. And God provided a miracle for them. Have you ever seen a miracle? Have you ever seen a miracle take place in your life or someone else's life or something going on around you? Have you ever seen one? Have you ever seen the water part and you walk across it on dry ground? I haven't. But I've seen miracles. And by the way, even the disciples of Jesus did not see the water part and then walk across it on dry ground. Although Peter did get to walk on the water. That was a miracle too. But they saw so many other miracles that Jesus did. They saw so many things happening. Well, the question is, do we still have miracles today? The answer is yes. We do. It may not be like walking on the water or parting the water and going across on dry land. But yes, we still do have miracles today. In the biblical days, the miracles were given to build faith in God, to show God's power, to show God's strength, to show that He was the true and living God. That's what they wanted them to see. That's what they wanted them to know. God's power. God's might. Is God weaker today than He's ever been? No. He's just as mighty, just as strong, just as great. He is the same God that He's always been. I've seen a lot of miracles during my lifetime. I have been the recipient of some miracles in my lifetime. No, I haven't walked across the water. But I've seen some things that were just as great. The demonstration of God's might, the demonstration of God's power, the demonstration of what God has done. I've seen miracles, and they're miracles just the same, even though I haven't seen 5,000 fed, and I'm thankful for every one of you here today. I'm glad that we don't have 5,000 because we would have to have a miracle to feed all of them. But we are going to feed you after church, so don't forget about that. I've seen miracles. I've never seen a person healed by some charlatan of a faith healer sticking their fingers in a person's ears and shaking them around, or smacking them in the head and knocking them down. I have never seen that because it's fake and phony. But I have seen people healed through the miracle of modern medicine. And I've also seen people healed when modern medicine failed and had no hope and nothing there. But God intervened and God healed him. I've seen it, haven't you? Those are both miracles. But there's another miracle that we're celebrating today, and that's the miracle of this church. This church is a miracle. Whether you realize it and know it or not, this church is a miracle. God put this church here, and He has blessed this church. He's blessed it in the past. He's blessing it still today. He's blessing it still today. He's blessed us. He's provided in miraculous ways for this church. And like the song said a while ago, I believe He'll do it again. Don't you? He's still God. He's still watching over us. He's still a part of this church. He's put it here. Well, today, excuse me. Today, in the scriptures that we're going to read, what we're going to do is we're going to see the second time that God parted the waters, I should say, for the Israelites to walk through them. This time, though, it wasn't the Red Sea. That was the first time. And you remember, the first time is found in Exodus chapter 14. Remember the story. Hopefully you've been watching and you saw our lessons on the Red Sea rules and you learned all these things. If you've missed those, go to Facebook Live to the Newcastle Free Will Baptist Church, and they're archived there. You can look back and watch them. Isn't that great that we have technology to do stuff like that now? That's a miracle in a sense. But you can watch that. You remember what happened. The Israelites had escaped from slavery in Egypt. The Egyptians were so distraught because of the plagues that God had brought, and that 10th plague in particular. And how God had passed over those who obeyed Him and put the blood of the Lamb on the doorpost. How that death angel passed over, but it hit all the others who did not. And the Egyptians were so thankful. They were so glad to get rid of these Israelites. They were so glad to get rid of them, to get them out and away, that they even gave them all their wealth, anything they wanted. They said, here, take our jewelry, take our wealth, take our money, just get out and go. And so the Israelites left. God led them out. But then Pharaoh and his army changed their mind. And they said, what are we doing? We're letting all these slaves escape. What are we doing? We're letting them free. We can't do this. And so Pharaoh and his army got all together, and they got their chariots and their horses and their army, and they started, we're going to go get them, and we're going to kill them or bring them back, one of the two. The Israelites followed God's leadership, and God led them right up to the Red Sea, and they were cornered. No place to go. The sea behind them. The Egyptians in front of them. They didn't know what to do. But God intervened. And Moses stretched out his hands, and the waters parted. The waters parted. And they walked across on dry ground. And not only did they walk across on dry ground, but the Egyptians saw that and they said, well, we're going to go get them. And they followed them out, and they got in the middle of the sea, and then God said, that's enough of that. And He let the waters come down on them and drown them all. Well, here they are now. Because of their disobedience, they've been wandering in the wilderness for 40 years. Now's the time to enter the promised land. Now's the time they're coming up to the Jordan River. But another problem here. The Jordan River was flooding. You know what a flood is. You know how destructive a flood can be. This time they're about to enter the promised land. But we see another miraculous movement of God, parting the waters of a flooding river to let them walk across on dry land. Let's read Joshua chapter 3, verses 15 through 17. And as soon as those bearing the ark had come as far as the Jordan, and the feet of the priests bearing the ark were dipped in the brink of the water, now the Jordan overflows all its banks throughout the time of harvest. The waters coming down from above stood and rose up in a heap very far away, and Adam, the city that is beside Zarethan, and those flowing down toward the sea of the Arabah, the salt sea, were completely cut off, and the people passed over opposite Jericho. Now the priest bearing the ark of the covenant of the Lord stood firmly on dry ground in the midst of the Jordan, and all Israel was passing over on dry ground until all the nation finished passing over Jordan. Now, I want us to remember that the God of the Old Testament is still the God of the New Testament. He is the same God of the New Testament that is the same God today that we serve, that we follow. Our God is God. He hasn't lost any power. He has not changed. And when we look at the miracle of the crossing of the Jordan River, there are two parallels I want us to see today. Now, you can honestly find more than two. There are more than two in there, but these two you'll see today that I want us to look at. First of all, the first parallel is that God is still capable of performing miracles even today. God can still perform miracles even today. After 40 years of wandering in the wilderness, the Israelites had finally learned their lesson to obey God, to trust in God, to put their faith in God. You know, sometimes I look at our church and I think maybe this is a lesson that we've needed to learn over these past 45 years. To trust in God, to put our faith in God, to believe in God. These Israelites had seen all kinds of miraculous acts of God while they were out there in the wilderness. They had heard the stories about the parting of the Red Sea. And now they had repented of their sin. They had rededicated their lives to follow God. And folks, sometimes we need to do that, don't we? We need to rededicate our lives. Say, God, I'm going to follow you. I'm going to do your will. I'm going to serve you no matter what. I'm going to follow you. The time had come to go forward. The time had come to end the wandering. And now they're about to see the greatness of God in many other ways. They don't know it yet, but they're going to. Sometimes we don't know what's ahead. We've got to trust in God. And when we trust in Him and put our faith in Him, we'll see miraculous things taking place. They needed to cross the Jordan River. But the river was flooding. They didn't have bridges in those days. They didn't have any way to get across like we do. I see every once in a while, though, a flood taking down a bridge, don't you, on TV? It happens. Flood waters are powerful. They tell us, they warn us, I don't know about you, but I get these warnings on my phone for flood watches. They said, watch out, conditions are right for flood. We've had a lot of rain, we're going to have a flood. And all of these warnings tell us that if you see water over the road, do not try to go through it. And every time we see on TV all these cars sitting out there in the middle with the water up to the windows, flooded out, the people have had to be rescued to get out of them because they didn't listen and they went ahead and tried to go through it. I remember one time several years ago, we took a group of kids to youth camp, and I went up there to see it. It was up in Pennsylvania. And it had rained all day, and it rained all that evening, and it had rained so hard. And I was coming back home, and it was at night, and I was driving on the highway, and I got into this one town, and I started down the hill, and I noticed lights flashing down there, and they had barriers across the road, and I had to stop. And I looked, and waters were flooding across the road. I don't know how deep it was, but it looked like it was probably about 5 or 10 feet deep. I'm glad that they had those signs up. I had to turn around. It took me longer to get home. I had to turn around and go a different route and try to figure out how to get home because I didn't have a map with me. But I had to try to figure out, and I made it home, and I avoided the flood, and I didn't get drowned. I'm thankful for that. But the river was flooding. They had to get across. Now was the time. It wasn't time. They didn't say, well, I guess we need to wait till the waters calm down. I guess we need to wait a little while. You know, we just can't get across these waters on our own. There's no way. Let's wait and wait. When the waters calm down, when the floods go down, then we'll go across and enter the promised land. No. The time was right. It was time to enter the promised land. And so they went forward. And God performed another miracle. God stopped the flood waters upstream and dried the land, dried the ground, and they were able to go across. What a miracle. What a miracle. Over 45 years ago, in 1975, according to Eileen Manus, God moved in the heart of a man to come to Delaware to start a church. Moved from Missouri, come to Delaware. What a miracle. 45 years ago, that church was organized into an official church. And that's what we're celebrating today. This church is a miracle. We are continuing to see the fruits, that miracle, the beginning of this church. Not only was the beginning of this church a miracle, but there have been many miracles that have kept this church going through the past 45 years. It's not just a one-time thing. God has worked and moved and provided. This church has impacted hundreds and probably even thousands of lives all across America and even around the world. From this church, missionaries have been supported all over the world. Missionaries have been supported in starting new churches in the United States and North America, Canada, Mexico. Missionaries have been supported by this church in doing that. From this church, our colleges have been supported to train missionaries and pastors to go out and work in churches and win the lost, witness to people for Jesus Christ, missionaries and ministers. This church started another church, mothered a church at Towns End, that God has blessed and has seen many, many, many people come to the Lord through that. This church, right here, is responsible and had a hand in all of those things. It has taken miracle after miracle after miracle to keep this church going over the last 45 years, but God has always been there and provided. I'm ashamed to say that there was a time in our history of our church here when we were struggling. And we quit giving like we should. We quit giving to our missions. We quit giving to our denominational enterprises. We quit giving to outside causes. And the less we gave, the less the Lord blessed. That's a lesson for us, folks. The less we gave, the less the Lord blessed. I'm thankful that time's over. I'm thankful that we've started giving again to our denominational enterprises, to support our colleges, to support our other denominational things. I'm thankful that we've started giving to missions. Every month, this church gives to our denomination, to our missions, both home and foreign missions, every month. And I'm thankful for that. And I'd like to see our giving increase, and it can. And we need to do that, and we need to be thinking about that and getting it to increase. And I'm thankful that time of self-centeredness as a church is over. that we're thinking about God and serving Him, and God has started blessing again in our church. I've seen many recent blessings that God has given our church. I'm going to mention one. I'm going to do it because it's just something interesting. We discovered in the last couple of weeks that our church has a savings account at the bank that we didn't know about. It has $1,000 in it. We haven't been getting any statements. The bank has not sent us any statements about this account. They've got our address. It's our church name. It's us. But the bank hasn't sent us a single statement. And I asked them, I said, why have we not been getting statements? And they said, well, we switched over to paperless statements where we send them out by email. And I said, well, whose email address do you have? And they looked and they said, nobody's. I said, well, whose name is on it? And they looked and they said, nobody's. Just the church. I think we're going to switch banks. But I said, well, what do we have to do to get this money, to get access to it? Well, we should have your corporation papers on file here. And they looked, and they didn't. And then they said, well, you need to bring us your corporation papers or a certificate of good standing for the corporation. And then you need to bring us minutes so we'll know who's in what offices. And then once we get all of that, then we can, let's put somebody's name on it, and then you can access that account. But hey, we've got $1,000 that we didn't know we had. That's a miracle. God's still in the miracle business, folks. And He's still in the blessing business. And He's still blessing our church today. We are seeing a gradual comeback of people after the pandemic. We still have people that are not here because of the pandemic. We still have people who are not able to come physically. We haven't forgotten you folks if you're watching. We love you. And that's part of why we do this online, on Facebook, on YouTube. But another reason is so that we can reach more people for Christ. That's why we do all of this. To reach people. God's still pouring out blessings. You know what we found out? We found out that what God said in Malachi 3 is true. He said, check it out. Now, these are in my words, but you won't find these exact words in the Bible. God said, check it out. Start giving back to God and see if I don't open the windows of heaven and start pouring out such great blessings that you can't contain it all. We've started giving as a church. And I've seen God start to pour out blessings on our church. And I'm telling you, it's not just for the church, it's for us as individuals as well. You'll see it. You will see it. Hebrews chapter 13, verses 7 and 8 said, remember your leaders, those who spoke to you the word of God. Now, we're talking about the past pastors, the people who've been leaders here. Consider the outcome of their way of life. Excuse me, I got to move this thing. It's blocking my view. Consider the outcome of their way of life and imitate their faith. It's not often a person can walk over and pick up a tree and move it. Jesus Christ is the same yesterday and today and forever. Luke chapter 6, verse 38. I love this verse. It's one of my favorites. It's not my absolute all-time favorite, but it's one of them. It says, "Give, and it will be given to you. Good measure, pressed down, shaken together, running over will be put into your lap. For with the measure you use, it will be measured back to you." Folks, we need to give. We need to be faithful in giving. A lot of people have come and gone through the doors of this church over the years. Many people have donated to this church with their time, their talents, their money, their spiritual gifts over the years. And the result is God has blessed. All that has been given and all that has been done was the result of God moving on a person's heart to give. This church is God's church. This church is a miracle. This church, we are blessed to be a part of it. And I'm going to have to hurry because I'm running out of time. We've taken a lot more time than I should have to do a couple of things, but it doesn't matter because we're going to feed you anyway. So you don't have any place else to go. Just stick around. We'll feed you. The second parallel is that not all miracles are the same. God tailors each miracle to the need at the time. God tailors each miracle to the need at the time. In Exodus, when the Israelites crossed the Red Sea, Moses stretched out his hands and God moved the waters apart. But here, when they started to cross the Jordan River, Joshua didn't walk up and said, "Okay, it's time to move." No, it didn't happen that way. God gave them different instructions. They followed a different way that God had told them. As a matter of fact, here, in crossing the Jordan River, the priests carrying the Ark of the Covenant of God had to actually step into the water. Sometimes we need to take that step of faith, don't we? But when they stepped into the water, they obeyed God, and they stepped out in faith into that water. Then the waters parted. And then they all walked across on dry land. The priests carrying the Ark of the Covenant stayed in the middle of the river, carrying the Ark of the Covenant until the whole nation had gone through. This didn't take 5 or 10 minutes, folks. This took probably hours and hours. But God kept the waters at bay, and they got through. This church, those miracles were similar, but they were different. This church is a miracle. We cannot compare this church to any other church because every church is different. Every church is different. The miracle is, first of all, that God placed it here. God put it here. It was God's leading. It was God's directing. God put it here. And the second miracle is that it's still here after all these years. Still here after all these years. This church is miraculously continuing to change lives, support missions, support denominational enterprises. The outreach in this church is continuing and going forward. I believe this church can and will be used to reach more people for Jesus in the Newcastle area and around the world in the years to come. Do you believe that?
Amen.
I do. We've had our ups and downs as a church. We've gone through some difficult times and trials and tribulations. But But God is in control. And this church still exists in spite of those who would want it to close. And folks, I know you don't know, and I'm not going to give names or anything, but there have been people in this church who wanted to close the doors and sell the property. But we didn't do it, and God's still here, and God's still blessing. God's still blessing. God put this church here. And I don't think God's going to change His mind, do you? Jesus is the same yesterday, today, and forever. God's not going to change. God's still blessing. He's going to keep on blessing, and I'm going to be here and enjoy His blessings as long as He leaves me here. I believe God's going to bless this church years into the future, or until Jesus returns, whichever comes first. God's going to bless. Philippians 4:19 says, excuse me, my God will supply every need of yours according to His riches and glory in Christ Jesus. That's a promise. Is it still true? Yes. And God is able to make all grace abound to you, so that having all sufficiency in all things at all times you may abound in every good work. Is that still true? Yes. Let us hold fast the confession of our hope without wavering, for He who promised is faithful. And let us consider how to stir up one another to love and to good works, not neglecting to meet together, as is the habit of some, but encouraging one another, and all the more as you see the day drawing near. I've been to a lot of conferences. I've been to a lot of seminars over my lifetime. And several years ago, I was blessed to be able to attend a conference in Chicago, Illinois, Willow Creek Community Church, Willow Creek Association put on, about leadership and about churches. And they went through their church, and at that time, it was the largest church in the United States. And they went through and they showed how God had blessed what they had done, how God was using them, how God was blessing them, that they had this ministry and that ministry, and people were coming to the Lord. And I enjoyed that. I got to listen, I got to learn. And I'm going to tell you, the first thing they told us, one of the first things they told us is they said, when you look at our church, don't copy us. Don't try to copy us. Don't try to be just like us, because it won't work. Because you're a different church. You're a different pastor than our pastors. You're a different location than we are. You have different people in your church than we have. Do not, whatever you do, try to copy our church. Learn instead some of the principles and apply those principles that will work anywhere. Apply those to your church. Use those. A few years after that, I had a pastor friend of mine call. I hadn't heard from him in quite a while. He had left the area in Missouri where I was, and he had moved off into Central Illinois somewhere. I don't even remember where he said. But he gave me a call, and he had gone to one of these Willow Creek conferences, and he was all excited. I don't know why he called me, but he did. But he was all excited about it. And he said, you know what we're going to do? He said, we're going to clone that church. We're going to be a clone of them. We're going to be just like them. Do everything just like them. And I thought, boy, you're making a big mistake. I never heard how it turned out. I think if it would have turned out well, I would have heard. I'm afraid it probably didn't. But you see, God works in different ways for each church in each different place. And God works in different ways for every person in every place where they are. God is going to do for you different than what He will do for me. And it's not because I'm better or worse, it's because I'm a different person. And you're a different person. We are all different. God tailors His blessings, His miracles to each and every one of us as individuals. God tailors His blessings to our church and every other church because we're all different and He does everything just for us. Isn't it wonderful that God's not just a cookie cutter God? He does everything different for all of us. As we celebrate 45 years of this church, we can look back at church history. We can see miracle after miracle. And I don't have any reason to believe that God's not going to continue to provide. I don't have any reason to believe that God's not going to keep blessing. I believe He will. God's not forgotten us. He's still blessing. And when I look back and I see all of you and your faces here, when I look and see people have been watching on Facebook or YouTube, I see God blessing. I see blessings. As we go forward from this place today, on this 45th anniversary, as we go forward, we need to put our faith and our trust in God, that God will continue to bless. Will you be with me in that? Will you join with me and enjoy God's blessings together? Let's pray. Father in heaven, we are so thankful for your blessings today. We're so thankful that you're here with us, that you've blessed this church for 45 plus years. And you're still blessing today. And that you will continue to bless. Continue to help us to go forward, to see people's lives changed through the preaching and the teaching of the gospel, to see the impact that what we can do here impacts the world and those around us with the gospel. Thank you for your blessings, Father. And we ask your continued blessings on this church, that you will bless it until the day our Lord Jesus returns. And we ask it in His name. I want to thank you all for putting up with me preaching a little longer today. What you don't know is I left a bunch of it out. I had more to say. I could have kept you here quite a while, but I didn't want to do that to you. I didn't want to cause other problems for you. But I got a feeling the stomachs are growling. People are hungry. We've got some